Hello and welcome to another Tyrrell's Classic Workshop. We're diving into my own collection of cars, which we looked at a little while back. It's a fairly eclectic mix, but there's one in particular that I'm going to look at because I just think it's a really good car. Of course, I would say that because I own it, but it's this little cutie, the Range Rover L322 4.2 litre Supercharged petrol V8. It's a big name for a big car. I bought this car. I've always liked Range Rovers. I like the sort of sitting high up. My good lady, Mrs. T, also likes the fact that you can see over hedges when you're driving that you can't in other cars. So it gets the seal of approval. It's comfy. It's got heated seats, all that sort of good stuff. This particular car, as I say, I've always liked them. I went and bought this car from a boxer in London, a 6'3" tall heavyweight boxer, and he collected me from Euston Station, and we sort of went about buying the car, etc., for the princely sum of £5,500 5 years ago in January 2019, and it was very amusing because we were in the traffic coming from Euston Station, and a guy started to engage in road rage with this guy for no good reason. And I thought to myself, this could be an auspicious start to this car's ownership. And I was sort of trying to telepathically say to the other guy, do not get out of your car and start having a go at this guy. Otherwise, you could be decked. He was a very nice man and a very mild-mannered man, but I wouldn't want to push it. So that's how the story started. But I drove it back to Chester, and it had 108,000 miles on it then, with a full service history, all the lovely stamps in the book, etc. We've done it's now on 128,000. So in the last 5 years, it's done 20,000 miles. Which by some stunning arithmetic, I mean, please be still my beating heart, equals 4,000 miles a year. And that's you know, it's a nice way to travel, and the fuel consumption is around about 17 miles to the gallon. It's pretty eye-watering. This car has long since lived through its manufacturing carbon footprint. It's depreciated the princely sum of probably £1,500, even with the added 20,000 miles in 5 years, which is staggering, really. It's cheap. This is cheap motoring on one level because you've got no depreciation. If you don't do too many miles, the petrol bill is sort of manageable. We keep this for particular occasions that demand a car like this to be used in, but they are a remarkable bit of kit, and there's almost becoming a cult following around the L322, this particular iteration of Range Rover, which is the Mark III Range Rover, if you like. Ivan and I were discussing this before we started recording. This is the sort of car you can drive on the road very respectably, very good ride. You can take it to the supermarket, put it in the car park. You can drive it to Buckingham Palace to meet King Charles, and it doesn't look out of place, or you can take it into an extremely muddy field and you stand a very good chance of getting to the other side, which is more than can be said for a lot of soft roaders, as they're called, such as the Porsche Cayenne or whatever, or the BMW X series, which have wide low profile tyres, which are next to useless in proper mud. So it's got a lot going for it, this car. It's a drive anywhere, literally, car. And it served us well, this car. A couple of years after I got it, the automatic transmission needed to be rebuilt, and that cost about £1,800 at mates rates from my local automatic transmission specialists, and that's given it a new lease of life. That was sort of fit and forget, really. I put a second-hand air conditioning compressor on it about 2 or 3 years ago because that wasn't working. It's now working fine. I've had to do a couple of offshore repairs here and there, one on the audio-visual system in the back. The optical fibre arrangement for the radio and the stereo in the car, I've done an offshore repair on that to keep it going till it can go in and have that sorted out at a specialist and we get the Bluetooth and everything back. But the driver's seat's a bit worn out. The seat heater doesn't work anymore. The steering wheel heater doesn't work. There's a whole load of stuff that doesn't work. But there's a whole load of stuff that does work, and I think these are incredibly good value. If you've got a bit of mechanical skill and a bit of know-how, you can buy one of these super cheap and sort of keep it on the road, really, assuming you can afford. Of course, this is on my motor trade policy, so I don't actually have to afford the insurance per se, which is a massive help. But it's a lovely place to be. It's a great place to travel. The engine is bulletproof. This is the Jaguar XKR engine, 4.2 litre supercharged. The later one is far superior, the 5 litre version of this, and they are still commanding twice the price of this, probably for an equivalent example, because the 5 litre is quicker. It's actually more economical because of the gearing in the automatic transmission, and it's just they give it a bit of a revamp styling wise, and the interior, etc. But so the 5 litre is a far superior vehicle actually. But even so, I'm talking about value for money here. It's a very grand and cheap way of going out on a Sunday afternoon for a drive, Sunday lunch or whatever. This is the Vogue SE, so it's got absolutely every conceivable extra. I don't know how many of them are made in this colour, Java Black. I think about 99% when you see the amount of other Range Rovers on the road. They seem to be all Java Black, which is not my favourite colour, I have to say, but very few of them are blue metallic, red metallic, silver, white, a tiny percentage of them. It's still presentable, it's still fine, it still looks the part, it still goes the part. I'm thrilled with this car. It's been super reliable. And also, it's not terribly stealable like the later Range Rovers were. You stand a chance of parking this in London, which I never do, because I don't know how the ultra low emission zone works, but I think this car is even actually exempt from that. You stand a chance of coming back to it after it's been parked somewhere and locked. Lot to be said for old trusty ignition keys. Obviously, Harry, who really spawned this channel, Harry Metcalf and Harry's Garage, loves his 322. We often have conversations about them, how wonderful they are. He's got the TDV8, the diesel version, which makes more sense in terms of miles per gallon, just running costs. But this has cost nothing to run. We have maintained it. It has been in the workshop for brakes, engine or brake fluid changes, engine oil filters, etc. But it's basically been no trouble, this car. It really is. It's like an old comfortable pair of slippers or an old pair of leather shoes. In the last 5 years, I've just grown to love this car and really appreciate it. It's a comfortable, lovely place to be. And actually, with the uprated suspension of the supercharged petrol car, it actually handles pretty well too. It doesn't go around corners, it doesn't roll. I mean, I think back to, I worked on several of the early versions of the Range Rover, the Series 1, the 3-door, and they rolled. I mean, you went round a corner and it was literally like that. This is a far cry from that. It really is. For a car with such a high centre of gravity, it really is quite remarkable. The later car is a development. It's actually a complete rehash, and it is arguably the better car. It's 400 kilos lighter, or 850, 900 pounds lighter, which is a massive amount due to the fact it's aluminium instead of steel unitary construction. The body as a whole is made up of aluminium castings and pressings, whereas this is steel. But the replacement to this is about 7 inches wider, about 770 millimeters wider. And when it comes to car parks, certainly in the UK, I'm sure in the US it's different, but with modern big cars, car parking spaces are getting smaller and smaller and smaller, and you have 2 or 3 big cars parked in spaces next to each other. You struggle to get in and out of them if they're actually parked in the space. So 7.5 inches wider than this for the later one, I think is actually quite a big deal, literally. I've got to give this car some airtime because it's part of the collection. It's like an old friend. It's not immaculate. There's rust and damage on virtually every panel, but it's just growing old, disgracefully like me, really. And I just happen to love it. So that's why I had to make a video about it. I'm going to take it on the road and just give it a drive. And yeah. I don't want to bump the price of 322 Range Rovers up, but Harry made a video with Jeremy Clarkson about their 322s a while back. They just seem like a lot of great car for next to nothing. Well, this is where the rubber hits the road with the Range Rover, because I think they still look great, this shape, but it is, after all, the driving experience which defines a car largely. And this is absolutely brilliant. It's in spite of the fact that it's a heavy beast. I think these are 2.3 tons or something. And the Discovery is even a bit more than that, 2.55. The Discovery is 2 3/4, I think. The Discovery 3, as it was called. I mean, these are massively heavy vehicles for a European car, as opposed to an American car. But for all the fact that it is heavier than the later ones by some considerable margin, it's still a very good ride handling compromise. And I was going to drive around that corner reasonably quickly, but confronted with something even bigger as I was, I'll wait till the next bend. But that nice V8 burble just quietly in the background. I'm not going to slow down for this corner. I'm not intending to drive this on the door handles, but there we go. Next to no body roll. Incredible for a car of this size and weight and performance. I did have the engine chipped up by Super Chips, which they have an excellent reputation, but I noticed some difference, but not quite the difference I expected. But I suppose that's bearing in mind it's a supercharged engine and not a turbocharged one. That's understandable because there's a limit. They can't remap the boost. You can fit a different pulley on them, which increases the speed by 6%, I think, but I haven't bothered with that. I've just kept it largely standard, and as you can see, our test track doesn't get any better. I've deliberately used it for this one because it's normally, the old Range Rovers, the P38 and the Classic as it's now called, okay, we're going back a very long time in terms of technology, but they would have been crashing along this road, and this is smoothing out the bumps beautifully, even though it is the most sporting full-size Range Rover that could be bought at the time, and I think the most expensive. Steering is beautifully weighted, it's very communicative, just the right amount of feel, it's just the right amount of self-centering, and again, that's something you don't always get with modern electric power steering systems. They try to build weight and feel into them, but weight and feel are two different things. Weight does not give you an idea of what's happening on the road. It just loads up the steering to make you think you're working against it. And they are actually two very different things. You can't beat steering feel. And one of the joys for me when I drive any of these cars, and this is sort of almost a classic now in its own right, is that steering feel is a big deal. And with modern electric power steering systems, you lose that for the reasons I've explained. But yeah, it's choppy, but it's firm, but it's not bad. And again, I'll just press on a little bit through this bend, and there's just negligible body roll. There we are. Just, yeah, not bad at all. Very surprising. I'll just open it up on this straight. I think standard they're 0 to 60 in 7 seconds, something of that order, which these days is positively pedestrian for electric vehicles and a lot of cars, but it's not bad. It's got a lovely power curve. Again, it just builds up on the power right up to the red line at 6,000. Yeah, it's not a bad place to be at all. I need to sort this out. It's not working properly at the moment. The other thing is that the music system in this car is very good. It's a Harman Kardon system, that, as I said, that BMW used in vehicles. And it's a top of the range. I can't remember how many drive units it's got, how many speakers, but I think it's about 11 or something, quite a lot. And it does make for a good sound. I did listen to a singer called Iain Tyrrell recently, and that's enough to challenge any stereo system. We'll just get it round this roundabout and sample that 4.2 litre supercharged magic. Here we go. Very respectable acceleration. And huge Brembo brakes, specially developed for this car. What's not to like? We don't talk about the fuel consumption, but just a very pleasant, civilized place to be, this. I like them. Good cars. I like this 322. This is going nowhere in a hurry. I'm going to keep this car for a good while. When it comes to buying one of these cars, should you decide to venture into this this minefield of potential benefits versus potential wallet emptying experiences, there are various things to watch out for. The suspension is air suspension. The pump is in the boot inside the spare wheel back. The pump is made by Wabco, and it's similar to the ones used in Audi Q7s and things like that, I think, and also BMWs. And there is a tiny washer inside it. They can come up, as this one has done on several occasions, with air suspension fault, and it simply means the pump isn't pumping enough air into the suspension. And replacing a tiny little the actual piston ring on the piston in the compressor for all of £9, plus a bit of labour, actually can rejuvenate the air suspension. The electrics are, I've had no trouble with the electrics on this, other than the AV system going down for whatever reason, but they can be troublesome. Watch out for water ingress at the left-hand rear pillar if you go through car washes or whatever, because that's where all the hi-fi, etc., is stacked. It's a Harman Kardon system, which it also shares with BMW. The engines are pretty well bulletproof. The 3-litre diesel that they came out with when they first were brought into use are not the most powerful engine in the world. It's a lot of weight to pull along. So service history, even at cars of this age and value, can be quite good, actually, and they need to be there. But really, the car needs to have a decent service history. Check for wear on the tyres. Make sure that they're wearing evenly. There's no feathering on the outside or inside edges. That tells you whether the wheel geometry is okay or not. If you can feel a ridge on the inside but not the outside, it means that the tyre is either feathered, towing out or towing in. There's rust around the back end above the rear bumper and also in the rear wheel arches. That's something that they do suffer from. This is actually suffering a little bit with that. We'll probably need to have it attended to, but it's not top of my list at the moment. But yeah, I hope that at least scratches the surface of some of the things to look out for on the L322. Well, that concludes another Tyrrell's Classic Workshop video. Thanks very much for liking and subscribing and for watching, and we'll be back with something else very soon.